It's recording.
Welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting for NPA 2022-0008. If you haven't done so already, please let us know who is here in the chat box. If you could type your name and organization if you're associated with one. I will use this as the meeting sign-in sheet. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone. Please turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth. This meeting will be recorded and publicly posted to the speakupaustin.org/NPA website. If you do not want your image viewed publicly, please turn off your camera. My name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager. There's no zoning case filed. Mark Walters is here. He will be facilitating the meeting tonight. We work for the City of Austin Housing and Planning Department. The agenda tonight, I'll go over basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. I'll do a brief presentation, then Michael Whalen will do a presentation, and we will open the floor to questions and answers. The case information, the property address is 3121 East 12th Street. It's 21,780 square feet. The plan amendment case number is NPA 2022-0008.01. The project name is 3117 through 3121 East 12th Street. The request is to change the future land use map from commercial to mixed use. Like I said, there's no associated zoning case filed at this time.
There is, Maureen, there is a zoning case filed. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there is one pending to make it all CSVMU, and that's in process.
Okay. So the property owner applicant is Douglas Gene Howard, independent executor of the estate of author Gene Howard. The agent is Michael J. Whalen from Armbruster and Brown. Guidelines for group discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. Please postpone general comments during the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol in the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting, and we will call out the last 4 digits of the phone number. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to questions in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. If you are having connection issues, turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. We ask that you be respectful to each other during the discussion. Any personal assaults may result in removal from the meeting. As I mentioned, the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to the speakupaustin.org/NPA website tomorrow morning. You can email me at any time with any questions or comments that you have. If you have written comments, they will be added to the staff case reports when the case is scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council. You will get a notice in the mail of the date and time of the Planning Commission and City Council hearings if you live within 500 feet of the property. The meeting notice will have instructions on how to participate in the public hearings. So why is there a plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and most NPAs are amendments to a plan's future land use map, and most NPAs have an associated zoning application. This map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans. These areas have a plan document that have the vision and goals of the planning area, and most of which also have a future land use map, also called a FLUM. The colors on the future land use map represent broad land uses. For example, the existing land use on this property is commercial, and it is shown in red. And the proposed is mixed use, and that would be represented in the brown color. This map shows the property zoomed in to show that the commercial red land use is currently on the property, and the proposed is the brown, which you see to the left of the property. This is a Google screenshot of the aerial photo that shows some of the surrounding uses to the property. Here's a Google screenshot street view of the property. A future land use map aerial photo that shows, again, the commercial land use. To the north is yellow, and that's single family. To the east is orange. Other than the red lot right next to it, you go further east, orange is multifamily. To the south is multifamily, and to the west, you can see that brown, which is the mixed use. The zoning map shows the property is currently zoned CSMUV-CONP, and that's General Commercial Services District, mixed use, vertical mixed use, conditional overlay neighborhood plan. The growth concept map, these colors represent regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers, and then there's activity corridors. And this map shows the property in relation to the activity centers and corridors. You can see Airport Boulevard to the east, the white with the two brown lines, that designates it as an activity corridor. You can see the East MLK Neighborhood Center to the top left, shown in yellow. This map shows the property in proximity to public transportation. The two brown lines represent Capital Metro bus routes. The brown dots, circles, represent Capital Metro bus stops. Capital Metro rail route is shown to the left with the red lines. And the urban trail network near the Metro rail is shown with the lines and the dots to the left, the west of the property. So that ends my presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen and Michael can share his.
Okay.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I think April's gonna pull that up. Give it 1 second. There we go. Well, good to be with you tonight. I appreciate folks being here. I'm Michael Whalen on behalf of the applicant, and joining me is April Brown. As indicated, I'm here tonight to discuss our request to rezone 3121 East 12th Street from CSMUV-CONP to CS1. Excuse me, there's 3 lots, CSMUV-CONP. There's one that's CS1-CONP and a CSCONP, and we want to rezone them all to be consistent CSMUVNP, as well as our accompanying request, which is tonight, to amend the future land use map, or the FLUME, for a piece of the property from commercial to mixed use that you already saw.
Okay.
We go to the next slide.
No
The recap.
problem.
The beginning slide. There we go. The rezoning request would unify the 3 parcels under the same zoning designation and allow the site to develop under its base zoning standards by removing a conditional overlay. You can see there the 3, we'll show you these 3 lots in a moment, but those are the 3 zoning categories. We are still working on the details of the project, but we envision a mixed use project with live, work, or flex space and somewhere between 80 and 110 residential units, including affordable units, which would be in compliance with the city's vertical mixed use program. As we'll discuss tonight, our proposal advances goals and objectives in the Rosewood neighborhood plan and aligns with council and city planning policies. So here's, again, a location map of the site so you can orient yourselves again. The site is on East 12th within 500 feet of Airport Boulevard. And as you already saw, this is an image of the site today from the frontage road. It is largely undeveloped with 1 vacant former commercial space. So let's talk about the site and why residential development is appropriate in this location. As I mentioned, the site is located less than 500 feet from Airport Boulevard, which is designated as an Imagine Austin Activity Corridor and an Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, or ASMP, Transit Priority Network roadway. And here you can see the 3 lots the full lot to the right there is the one that is in the future land use map shown to be commercial that we're seeking to change or to amend the plan to make that mixed use. And then the rectangle that has the two is where we're going to be rezoning so that all of these are CSVMU, NP. Anyway, let's go back to this slide and the ASMP and being designated as a transit priority network roadway and an activity corridor. These designations are important because the city uses them to guide growth and with the aim of concentrating new development around corridors and transit. Our project would advance Imagine Austin planning principles, including to, quote, focus future investments to support corridors and, quote, expand the number and variety of housing choices throughout Austin, end quote. Additionally, our proposal supports the ASMP. The first land use policy in the ASMP written document is to, quote, promote transit supportive densities along the transit priority network, end quote. This means higher density developments like multifamily and mixed use projects. The site is, Maureen also pointed out, is also well supported by existing transit. Among the routes running along and near the property, I know Maureen already showed you where the stops are, but you've got Route 6 running east-west into downtown, Route 350 going north-south from ACC Riverside to Lamar and 183, Route 485, which is a late night bus running from downtown through Mueller and up to the Walmart off Rutherford. And then to the south of the property, Route 2, which is a weekday high frequency route taking riders into downtown. Here are the current flume designations for this area. You can find the key at the center of the screen. Our site is made up of 3 parcels, 2 of which are already designated as mixed use, and 1 that is currently designated for commercial. And as you can see on the map, the envisioned project would be consistent with nearby land uses in the area, with the brown tracks denoting mixed use on the flume and the orange showing the multifamily tracks. The Rosewood neighborhood plan seeks to increase affordable housing units in the area, reduce the number of vacant lots, and allow live, work, flex space or mixed use development on tracks zoned for commercial uses in the neighborhood. Our proposal would fulfill all 3 of these stated goals, providing affordable housing through the city's vertical mixed use program, which requires that 10% of the units be affordable, developing vacant lots to provide new housing opportunities to Austinite, and as currently envisioned, creating mixed use live work space on commercial lots. I want to note that our project also advances recent council direction to allow residential uses on commercially zoned lots. The council has directed the city manager to extend the residential use option to commercial properties in exchange for affordable housing, which mirrors exactly what we intend to do here. So to recap, this site is located near an Imagine Austin activity corridor and an Austin strategic mobility plan transit network priority roadway. Imagine Austin, ASMP, and other city policies encourage density on and around corridors and transit lines. And the council, as we've seen, has taken steps to allow residential uses in commercial zoning districts. Mixed use is consistent with other land uses in this area, immediately adjacent, in fact. And the proposal meets several goals set forth in the Rosewood neighborhood plan. That's all I have. I really appreciate the time to be here tonight, and obviously we're available to answer any questions, and I'll mute to turn it back to Maureen and Mark to facilitate. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. This is Mark Walters, a principal planner in the Housing and Planning Department. And before we get started tonight, I'd like to acknowledge that we had kind of an issue with the call-in phone ID, that the Teams channel, the Teams system changed the ID from the time Maureen mailed the notice out till today. And this has also affected 5 other meetings. So this is an issue that we're looking into, and we apologize for this. We've been doing these meetings this way since summer of 2020, and this is the first time that anything like this has happened. So what I would like to propose is that anybody who, if we hear from people who could not make it tonight, who couldn't call in, and they call Maureen and let them know that they couldn't call in, if it's just a handful of people, We will, spend some time with them, talk them through and let them know that also the meeting has been recorded. So if they have the means to, they can watch the meeting and maybe have some of their questions answered. And if we discover there is a significant number of people, we will consider possibly having another informational meeting, but we'd have to play that by ear. So that's what we're proposing. Like I said, this is the second time in a week this has happened. So for that, I apologize, but it's been out of our control. And with that, I would like to ask people if they have any questions about the case or like to make any comments, would either raise their hand in the raise their hand, virtual hand, or type something in the chat. It's this is your opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, and I encourage you to do so. Yes, Chris, would you unmute and ask your question or make your comment, please?
Sure. So I know the applicant also has another property that is basically on the other side of the block on Oak Springs. And they anticipate 250 units on that site, up to 110 units on this site. How do you anticipate the traffic pattern being adapted to that increase in density? Given the fact that Homewood Heights currently only has one road that leads north out of the neighborhood and one road that leads south out of the neighborhood.
Mark, would you like me to answer or are you going to answer?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first, Chris, thank you for the question. I know you've been talking to April. And before I answer, I do want to also offer as another option, Chris, to attend a Homewood Heights meeting if you want to organize one to go through this as well and to have a face-to-face discussion. I'm available. We can just pick a time one evening in the next, couple of days, and I'm happy to come to y'all if you'd like to do that. As to trips, the number of units here is modest, relatively speaking, and the terms of the number of trips at the Oak Springs. Well, first I wanted to emphasize there's no zoning request, nor will there be that we're anticipating associated with the Oak Springs property, which is a separate development. And you are correct, it is owned by the same people. But I think what we're talking about here would be, well, there'd be two separate locations, and in terms of trip pattern, I can't speak directly to the direction people will be going. Most of the time, traffic engineers, I believe, make assumptions about directions people are going to go and head for their work in the morning and errands during the day and returning home. But given proximity to airport, I'm not sure whether they would be going to airport or whether they would be splitting between airport and directly to downtown. So I mean, I don't have an answer, I guess, is another way in terms of which direction people would be going.
Chris, did that answer your question, or is that an old hand up or a new hand?
I'll let anyone else go if they'd like to.
Okay, I'll lower your hand for you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hi, I'm dialed in. So sorry,
So
I can't.
You're on. Okay. Yeah, I was going to get to you. I was going to do that, but go ahead. You're here. Ask your question.
Yeah. So my name's Jasmine Wind. I am from residents of East 12th Street Neighborhood Association. I'm just going through the mailer, and it's unclear to me like what the process is for this amendment request, could you give just some administrative information about like what the process would look like?
You might have called in after that part of the presentation. So, because we had the hiccup with the phone. So here, I'll go over it really quickly. There's the Rosewood neighborhood plan. It was adopted in November 2001. It was adopted by city council at that time as an element of the comprehensive plan. Okay. Our city charter says that all land use decisions, and zoning is a land use decision, needs to be consistent with that plan. Inside the neighborhood plan, there's a map called a future land use map, or FLUM, FULM for short. And that has broad land use categories that certain zoning categories fit into. So in the case of this, there's three parcels. Two of the parcels for this proposed project are already designated as mixed use, and one is designated as commercial. And the applicant is asking to amend that map in order to change the zoning, which would be done concurrently by council. The zoning is a mishmash of several very high density commercial districts, as well as one commercial district that allows alcohol sales. And that he's changing it in order to get the zone to do a mixed use project. Does that make sense administratively? Why we're having the meeting?
Yeah, so this meeting is like, what's the goal of this meeting, and then what would be the actual approval
Okay.
process?
Moving forward, this meeting is a statutorily required meeting that that is for every neighborhood plan amendment, and it's basically an informational meeting for people to attend. Either back in the before times, we did them in libraries and cafeterias and church rooms, but now we're doing them virtually. To just find out more about the project, to sometimes make your first connections between the community and the applicant. And then that's the purpose of this meeting. There's no vote tonight. There's no, this is
Okay.
just an informational meeting. The next part in the process, public wise, would be the planning commission hearing, which I don't think has been scheduled. Then after that, at that meeting, planning commission either makes a positive, negative, or no recommendation to the city council. The next step in the process goes to the city council, and then they'll consider it and make a decision. So that's
Okay.
kind of the
That's
stepwise process.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and Mark, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, this is Jane Rivera. I
Hi,
am
Jane.
the chair of the Rosewood Neighborhood Contact Team.
Mhm.
And I apologize that I'm only on phone, but I couldn't get Teams to work, so here I am.
No,
And
we're
I'm
having
late because
troubles,
I couldn't
so
get Teams to
thanks
work.
for coming.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Jane?
My only question was just answered by what you were telling her, that the next part of the process will be that it goes to the planning commission and then it'll go on to the city council. So that's helpful. And the other question I had was, how many units of affordable housing and at what depth of affordability are being proposed?
I think Michael will have to answer that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane. Michael Whalen, on behalf of the applicant. It'll be 10% as required of all units, and
Okay.
at 60% MFI. As you know, VMU was just amended to require that all be at 60% MFI.
Okay.
And so that would be the situation here. And we estimate, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and we estimate anywhere from, I think, 80 to, I think it was 80 to 100, 110 residential units total. Probably somewhere in the middle there.
So you don't plan to exceed the 10%, but just to meet it?
Yeah, we're not getting any subsidy from the city to either lower the MFI or add to the affordable housing number. We would be open to that if the neighborhood thought there would be a way to have the city buy down affordability or buy more affordable units. We would certainly look at that option. But this is totally subsidized by the by the owner, the affordable component.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification as to your willingness if helped out financially. So thank you.
So,
And Mark, can I just emphasize again, since
go ahead.
Jane was late in getting on, I indicated to Chris, Jane, that I'm happy to meet in person to help
Okay.
communication. I think I might have sent you and some others an email a couple of months ago with the application, and
Yes.
happy to. I hope you got those.
I got the email. My attachment didn't have everything in it that it should have had. So I've had all kinds of technical difficulties, and it's just unusual.
Okay. Well, I'm glad at least you got my email a couple of months ago, and we're definitely, as I indicated in that email, and I indicated here publicly, I'll add my email address in the chat, and even though you already have it, and I'm happy to meet anytime. If evenings are more convenient, that's fine. We'll be there and happy to meet in person.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's one other person who was on the phone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question. I think they got this right. Is the person whose phone number ends in 3106. Do you have any questions, or would you like to make a comment?
Oh, that was me.
Oh.
That was Jasmine about the
Oh, Jasmine.
question. So that was the main question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then the next person on the phone whose ends in 2548, do you have a question, or would you like to make a comment?
No questions here.
Okay, then we're going to go to the folks with their hands raised. The first person there is Daniel. Would you please unmute and ask your question or make your comment, please?
Hi, this is Daniel Wells. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Daniel.
Yep. The homeowner live in the neighborhood and had a question about the additional request to remove the ordinance for limiting the height to 40 feet. We wonder if there's more information about that and how that fit with the neighborhood plan.
Yes.
Michael, or
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Well, when the plan was adopted back in 2001, there was a zoning ordinance associated with it. And at that time, the zoning ordinance had a conditional overlay apparently that said that the building height should be limited to 40 feet. And I think the applicant and their agent is asking for the conditional overlay to be removed as part of the zoning case associated with this plan amendment. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, no, that's correct. And I think, in the last 20 years, what we've seen also is construction techniques are such that that's a height that works for infill, especially infill of a vacant lot, which I think specifically called out in the neighborhood plan. So that's the rationale.
Could I comment about that?
Sure, Jane.
My comment is, because I have been with the contact team since the beginning, my comment is that the contact team has never actually happily supported any increase in height except for one case, and that was where the height was going to be increased in the very center of a multi-acre project.
So, Daniel, do you have any other questions or comments?
The only additional comment there would be that there was quite a bit of discussion from Michael about how it fit with the neighborhood plan, but I didn't hear much about how adding a tall building to that site would fit with the neighborhood plan. And what is the proposed height, if that is removed, what is the proposed height of the development?
Well, the maximum height would be the 60 feet. I think there's certainly, we'd be open to discussing a way to balance the issue or the perception of height with affordable units and how the two interact. Because I think if you cap it at 45, there's a bigger impact in terms of affordable units and housing generally, which, as you well know, is a priority in the community generally right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. So Chris, go ahead, Dan.
I'm guessing Chris probably has his hand up to discuss more, but I think that there is certainly a tie between the volume of traffic and trips through the neighborhood and the height of that building. So that is the concern from the neighborhood.
Yeah, and the city's two things happen. The city's transportation engineers are going to look at the development regardless, during site plan process, and the developers engineers also will have to look at that because they're going to want to make sure that the project works and flows well in order for it to be a success. I mean, people don't intentionally create a situation that is untenable from a traffic perspective, because then it is not a desirable location for people to live. So I think you've got a market balance in check, that is, the owner wants to be sure it works. But I think more importantly, from your perspective, the city engineers will be there in terms of evaluating that during the site plan process.
And Michael, also during the zoning review process, there is a transportation review of zoning cases as well. So there'll be a first look at that point. Okay. So Daniel, okay, thanks. So Chris, would you unmute and raise your hand, unmute and ask a question, a comment, and then Chelsea Collier is next up.
Sure. Michael, I was hoping that you could, I guess, address compatibility on the site, because even given the removal of the conditional overlay, wouldn't you still be constrained by residential compatibility of single family homes directly across the street?
There is some impact there. Those sites trigger compatibility for 100 feet from their property line. So that is correct, and we would fully comply with compatibility.
Chris, any other questions?
I do, but I'm going to let Chelsea go first.
Okay, Chelsea, would you unmute and ask your question or make your comment, please?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and host this discussion. I just want to verify that the plan is, in fact, to develop this property and not to flip it to other landholders in the area.
Well, that is the current plan. I think I'm never gonna say there's an absolute prohibition on buying and selling property, because that doesn't exist. But their intent and direction have been to look to develop this property themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Okay, we'll lower your hand, Chelsea, and Chris, you're up.
Yeah, so Mark, to give you a little background on some of what's been going on in our neighborhood, is Eureka has been buying up a number of vacant lots, seeking to increase entitlements through various rule changes. And we know that there's at least one case further down 12th Street where the city worked with the neighborhood pretty intensively to strike a balanced outcome. And after all that negotiation over a significant period of time and with a lot of effort by the community, the asset was then just flipped to a speculator. So I think some of the neighborhood's general response to this kind of request is, we're skeptical because we don't see an actual project listed on Geyser's website. We currently see under TCAD and in the application that this property, is, I guess, applied for under the executor of the Howard estate. And so is there any way that you're aware of, whereby Geyser or horizontal investors or whoever it may be could actually assure the neighborhood and have a durable agreement in terms of, you know, what we would support or not.
Well, I could have to echo Michael's statement that people can still buy and sell property, and but I'm going to more of a procedural process discussion. Zoning is the very first phase in the development process, and it's not unheard of for somebody to have a contingent sale on the successful zone change in order to get that. So once they get the zone change, they buy it. And then the next part of the project would be the site plan stage. But site plans are very, very expensive. So many people don't go in, maybe they have a sketch site plan, but not with a detailed plans, because to spend tens of thousands of dollars above and beyond the cost of getting a zone change that you may not get, and to spend it on a project that'll never get built if you don't get the zone change. I mean, if it's from a financial perspective, it's just not a very good approach. I mean, I'm not a developer, but that's what I've seen by doing this for over 20 years. So I don't know, that's not really answering your question, but kind of puts why we're here tonight. This plan amendment is associated with the zone change. And so this is like in the very first part of the process. So I don't know, Michael, would you like to add anything?
No, I mean, I think that's accurate. And Chris, I mean, the reason it's in that estate name is because, as Mark stated, we're people in Austin, because the process is so easy. I'm being facetious. Well, the process to get even a site plan in this town is so difficult. People will not close on property until they have their entitlements. And so that's exactly the situation here, as Mark described.
I think so. Some of the frustration of the community is we often get these requests for increases in entitlements, and we get this with the narrative that there's, you know, that by agreeing to these entitlements will somehow alleviate the housing shortage or crisis, or however you'd like to describe it here in Austin. And oftentimes by supporting these increased entitlements, we actually see no outcome that does benefit or dilute the housing market, or, you know, or even provide on-site affordability. Is there, you know, any indication at this point that the affordable units would be on site, or would there be fee in lieu?
There's no fee in lieu option under vertical mixed use. They have to be on site.
Okay.
And what's the affordability? And is it basically 50 years for rental properties?
No, 40 years for rental properties at 60% MFI.
Okay. So 4 decades of affordable housing should this project come to fruition. Okay.
And
Chris, I want to add one other thing. A VMU project is required. And I can send you the statute, the regular city code, but you're required to have a residential component. You have to have a commercial use on your ground floor, but you're required to have residential in the on at least one of the upper floors, I think is the way it's phrased. I don't have the exact phrasing at the tip of my tongue, but residential is required in the structure.
Okay. And would these 80 to 110 units be for more of a family scale, you know, set of residences, or would it be more towards studio spaces for individuals without, you know, basically, like, are these multi-room units? Are these going to support families in the community, or is it just for young professionals?
The unit mix has not been set yet. They haven't invested in, that's why the range is so large in terms of number of units. They haven't really invested in having an architect design how it's going to play out and what the unit mix would ultimately be.
And could you also, while you're on the line, tell us what so the affordable level that it would be at? You said it's, is it 60 or?
It's the mandated level, 60%. What happened is some other neighborhoods had opted in at 80% MFI, and the recent amendment to the vertical mixed use provisions have made that uniform throughout the city at 60%.
And what is 60% here in Austin today?
Oh, let me pull that up 1 second so that I don't speculate. It'll be on the city's neighborhood housing and planning. Neighborhood housing and planning.
Michael, I can answer that if that is helpful.
Yeah, sure, sure.
For a household of one, it's 46,380. Up to a household, or it goes higher than this, but two is 52,980. Four is 66,180.
And if I could comment, that's still higher than the average income of long-term East Austin residents. That's around 40,000 for a family of four.
Okay. So does anybody else have any questions or comments? Yes, Chris.
With the affordability unlocked bonus, what would be the maximum height if the requested zoning was granted?
Well, you could do affordability unlocked now, I believe.
80 feet, maybe? I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look that up, Chris, which I'm happy to do. 1 second.
It'd be a couple of stories more, though, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, again, I'm not an expert. I don't review building plans, so. You looking that up, Michael?
Yeah, I am. Real quickly here. There's two types. It's going to require my glasses. And your question was specifically, were you asking about the height, or were you asking about the level of affordability?
I think we got the affordability stuff already clarified. The height is what I'm curious about. If the requested zoning was granted and affordability unlocked was used, what would be the scale of the structure? The highest scale possible.
The height allowed by this would be increased 1.25 times. So 1.25 times. So whatever 60 times 0.25. It'd be 15 additional feet, so an extra story. That'd be 75 foot tall, because 60 feet is the maximum height in CS. That sounded about right, Michael?
That's a type 1 development. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1, you can construct to a height that is applicable. That is the applicable base zoning district height multiplied by 1.25. And for type 2, it's 1.5. So that would be 90 feet. So 75 and 90, depending on the level of affordability.
And the compatibility would be waived. So, okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions or comments they'd like to make at this time? This is your opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and of staff if we can answer them. So Chris, go ahead.
Does the applicant have, I know, as you've said, you guys are early in the stages of planning and haven't, done a complete analysis yet. Is there any even rough idea of what kind of commercial service would exist at the base level? Specifically, I'd like to point out another sore spot for the neighborhood is that we have a lot of vacant lots and we have a lot of fast food. And we're looking for something that's neither of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question. It's so market driven, Chris, and what you're seeing is also market driven. And I don't know why it's that way or why commercial businesses have decided. I mean, I'm not a retailer and I can't tell you why people have made the decision, whether it's because of uh, a lack of rooftops, a lack of dwelling units, enough density, or whether it's something else that's discouraging commercial development to be there. I will say this, a vertical mixed use building is required to design the ground floor in a way that specifically physically is designed for commercial space. I mean, there's specific requirements in terms of the height of the ground floor and how far back, et cetera, that it needs to be so that it can accommodate that commercial type use on the ground floor, or pedestrian oriented use might be a better way to say it, since that's also encouraged.
Also, the lot is very, very deep, but it's very narrow. I would say it's maybe a little over 100 feet frontage on 12th Street. Does that sound about right?
I think so. I'm not certain.
I guess the point of this would be is that because of that, you're likely to have more smaller storefronts than fewer larger ones. And that's the trend I've seen in a lot of mixed use buildings. It's not an absolute, but it is something that I have noticed. So, does anybody else have any? Okay, Adam.
Yeah, I did. Just so Chris, so I can finish it. I did find it in subchapter E. They're called dimensional requirements, if you want to look them up. And it does say that, you know, the ground floor has to have an entrance that opens directly onto the sidewalk, a depth of not less than 24 feet, and a height of not less than 12 feet. So there are specific requirements and a particular type of glazing.
Yeah.
Just wanted to. Okay, sorry about that interruption.
Yeah,
That's fine. Adam, well, Chris, Adam had his hand up first. So Adam, could you unmute and ask your question, please?
I think it relates to what Chris was saying, and yeah, I'm just having trouble. I'm looking at the plot and just understanding, you know, fitting 100 or 110 units on. I guess it's about an acre, and what it might look like with it looks like about 120 frontage road. So yeah, getting vehicles in and out, and I'm just trying to look at some other examples around the city on. I don't know that that's a question, but yeah, just trying to understand. And so is it looking like did y'all say a maximum height potentially of 90 feet?
No, that was only if they were to do affordability unlocked, which I don't think that is their plans. They haven't stated that tonight. But that would be an option should they choose to do a type 2 affordability unlocked. As it stands now, the maximum building height, not going the affordability unlock route, would be 60 feet.
This is Jane again. We have one mixed use facility that was built on East 12th Street. It's in, I believe it's in just outside or maybe just inside Homewood Heights. I'm trying to remember exactly where it's located. But there were only, I think, 24 units of residents in that, but they had 3 or 4 units on the ground floor for retail, and they had a very difficult time getting those places filled. Very difficult.
Okay. Are they filled today?
I think 2 of them are,
okay.
But I don't think all 3 are. You might have a look.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, would you unmute and ask a question, please? Or is that an old hand or a new hand?
No,
New hand.
New hand.
Okay.
So could you clarify a little bit more about when compatibility gets waived? what, I guess, what does affordability unlocked type 2 automatically waive compatibility of everything around it?
I'm not 100% on it, but that my quick scan of what was on the webpage, that's what it looked like. But I mean, you could go and research that yourself. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't. Waiver of compatibility requirements, height restrictions and setbacks from property line. Waivers the Florida area ratio, waives Florida area ratio. Occupancy limits, site area requirements, which are a function of the number of units you can build based on your lot size. Some modified parking and your setbacks are changed. So that's for type 1 and type 2. Yeah, but it also requires that 75% of your units that are affordable. And it sets out some guidelines of what that means. So yeah, so compatibility unlocked does waive affordability, I mean, compatibility standards.
Yeah, Chris, that's in section 25-2-518, the qualifying development. And if you do qualify, you get those particular, keeping in mind, qualifying means an extraordinary amount of affordable housing, typically done through a tax credit deal or a bond deal, with government subsidy.
So, anybody else? Anyone, this is your opportunity. We have about 30 minutes left for the meeting. It ends at 7:30, but a meeting doesn't have to expand to the time allotted for it. So if everybody feels they have the information they can get tonight, we can wrap up early. Or if people have extra questions, they can ask. Go ahead. Chris?
Sure. What would constitute a significant number of people that were unable to attend the meeting?
I would have to, I don't know. I mean, we have to find that out. If it's like, I don't know. It's an ambiguous term, but we don't know yet.
No, this is Maureen. No one has contacted me. I haven't gotten any phone calls or emails from people saying that they've had trouble logging in.
And
I'm just curious as to what would constitute a significant number.
I think it would be, wow, we got a lot of phone calls. We might need to do something, or we got 3 phone calls. I just don't know until it happens. That's not a great answer, but I think we have to wait and see. So Chris, do you have any other questions? Because Daniel has his hand raised, and I would go to him if you're.
I'd love for Daniel to go ahead, and I'll.
Okay,
I'll
Daniel,
wait.
would you unmute and ask
Okay.
away?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chris. So just from my understanding of the timeline, I know that you already went through this at the beginning of the call, but the decision about allowing for the removal of the 40-foot height restriction will get made by City Council?
Yes.
Okay. And that decision gets made based on this information, which is well before any of the traffic studies would be taking place?
Well, there'll be a transportation review at zoning. Again, I'm not a zoning case manager. I don't do that. I've done it very seldom over the last 10 years, like once. So I couldn't answer that question. What encompasses a zoning review a transportation review at the zoning stage?
But that just in the timeline that would take place after this request would either be granted or denied for the height removal.
Council would make the decision based on any number of factors.
But not a traffic study at that time.
Unless the transportation department had made a note, that would be in the case report.
Yeah. Generally, all of these things happen after a plan has been filed, not just at the zoning.
Yeah, no, and I was about to go on. Then the more detailed traffic study goes at the site plan stage. Yeah, once the entitlements are granted, then the site plan is filed, and then that's when the more detailed engineering review occurs.
And that's why neighborhoods have so much difficulty with it, because we're being asked to make a decision on changing entitlements before we have any idea what's really going to happen. But that's the way it's set up.
So, okay, Daniel, so at least your question was answered, maybe not to your satisfaction, but that,
Yeah, I think that's a very good description of that. So yeah, but thank you.
so Chris, go ahead.
Would a flum amendment have an effect on other properties in the neighborhood?
No, it's really a future land use map amendment is simply amending the map in a neighborhood plan. In this case, it is required because of a concurrent zoning case.
Right, but would it
So-
be precedent setting in some way?
Well, actually, it can be. But I think the precedent was set when the plan was created. If you look to those parcels, properties immediately to the west, I don't recall why this one parcel or these few parcels here were left commercial. That was, almost 21, it was exactly 21 years ago almost. So,
My guess would be that they actually had a need for commercial, walkable, close proximity commercial services. And
yeah, that's.
I'll say that there's a complete scarcity of that on the ground today.
Yeah. And in 21 years ago, that the building that's on the site now may have been actually in operation. I just don't remember. Jane may remember. I don't.
Yes, actually, we did have neighborhood-oriented businesses on those properties at the time, but then there became a problem that the one where Space 12 is now became a bar, and it was open until after hours because they were a bar where you bring your own, and that was a hassle.
Yeah, I can imagine, to say the least. Yeah. Yeah. So does anybody else have any questions or comments? If Maureen, if you would, I mean, I already went over the next steps in the process, but if you get your contact information out and off the top of your head, you have, do you know who the case manager is? I think it's probably Heather, who's the case manager for the zoning case. Yeah, you have it. Well, you're on top of things there, Maureen. So, Maureen, you want to go? Chris, do you have another question, or is that an old hand?
I do have a question. Is there any community benefits that are being offered by the developer to seek these changes? I know that housing is one thing that is often described as a community benefit, but I think it's more of a function of commercial activity for the developer. But when you're looking at Article 10 of the city charter and they're talking about future land use and the whole process, they're talking about a lot more than just housing. And I know that the city's narrative has been appropriately and heavily focused on housing, but there's a lot of other undermet needs in the neighborhood. So I'm curious to know if the developer is offering any community benefits to seek these increased entitlements.
Yeah, we haven't, as I indicated, I'd sent some emails out prior to filing this because that's certainly an appropriate conversation, and happy to have that conversation offline with the community to figure out what happens to be a particular need, but have not engaged in that conversation yet with you or Jane, but certainly open to do that as indicated by the prior email and by our conversation tonight.
Yeah, I see that happening as a standard in a lot of higher resource parts of the city, and I wish that was more robust before tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, yeah, I'd love to connect like that. That'd be great, and respond.
Mike, would you mind sending me the email with the attachments one more time, since I didn't get all the attachments?
What's your email, Jane?
Jane H.
maybe
Rivetta?
not do it public. This is being
Thank you.
recorded. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I sent you my email address in the chat, Jane. If you want to send me an email tonight, I will get that to you again.
Maureen, can I get that to you and have you get it to him? Because I don't
Sure.
have the chat just
Sure.
on the phone.
Yes, that we can do that, Jane.
Okay, thank you.
And Chris, if you want to send me your email, I'm happy to send you, the entire package as I did previously. Not
Yeah,
to you,
well-
but to folks. Yeah.
Will do, and I would anticipate having a thorough conversation.
So, okay, Maureen, do you want to go over, like I said, I already went over basically next step. And before we go there, does anybody else have any other questions? I usually say this and it usually stirs up a couple extra, but if nobody does, Maureen, just go about what's next.
Okay, so my planning team will meet. I will report to them the questions, comments, and concerns from this meeting. We'll look at the neighborhood plan, comp plan, and other documents and make a staff recommendation on the flum change. We'll pass that recommendation on to the zoning planners. They will meet independently and make a recommendation on the proposed zoning change. Then we will work with the applicant on planning commission and city council dates. Once we get those settled, I'll contact the planning contact team and any neighborhood person who wants any follow-up from me on the planning commission city council dates and work toward getting letters of recommendation to be added to the staff case reports.
And one thing I'd like to add, because this is closing into the end of the calendar year, and with the holiday season coming up, and many meetings are not going to be maybe consent only, like for planning commission later on in the month. This is not likely to go before either one, probably not till after the first of the year. Do you think that's an accurate statement, Maureen?
Yeah, there seems with the zoning team, because they have a more higher level of review, sometimes cases can be not moving as fast because of that. So yeah, but we will we'll keep everybody informed of possible dates. And I
Okay.
just put up the slide where I added the zoning case number, and I did find that. I apologize for that. And so I just added it to this slide.
Okay. Well, before we sign off, Michael, do you have any closing statements you'd like to give?
No. I thank you, Maureen and Mark, as always, for facilitating this, and Chris and Daniel and Jane and everyone else. I didn't get everybody's name who asked great questions, and I look forward to continuing to engage. And again, as I stated previously, if you want to organize a meeting in person, I'm ready to attend tomorrow night or Thursday night or next week if that's more convenient, but happy to find a time to do that.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I would like to also thank everybody who took some of their time to find out about this case. We really appreciate people coming out, even if it's virtually, coming out to find out more about what's going on in their community. And with that, I would like, also one more thing, if you do have questions, you can send them to Maureen or Heather, and we can try to answer them or get them into the case file if you have comments. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening, and thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Maureen. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.